So you got 0.4 of a second improvement in acceleration rate. 0.4 of a second. That's pretty substantial.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Because this isn't a long distance. We're
Right.
not talking about 0.4 mile. We're talking about 0.4 in what equates to probably a little bit less than 1/8 of a mile. Okay, so it's a pretty substantial improvement in acceleration.
Alright guys, so the Scatpack has some long tube headers finally installed on it. Now before I kick it off to Ted over at Jannetty Racing, who's really doing all the installation, the dyno tuning, and all that kind of good stuff, I kind of want to catch some people up that may have missed the prior videos. The Scatpack is being featured on this channel, and we're going to document the entire build. And it just pretty much got kick-started. So if you like, 392 content, definitely make sure you hit that subscribe button. So up until this point, there has been an air raid intake installation that didn't really net too much horsepower and torque. So they moved on to a Hellcat throttle body. And the Hellcat throttle body is 92 millimeters, which is fairly large. So they had to port the intake manifold for it to really fit and be optimized. There's also an adapter that needs to be purchased. So, keep that in mind if you're going to do a Hellcat throttle body. So with the throttle body, there really wasn't much horsepower and torque gains. There was some low-end torque that was gained in the lower RPMs, but for peak wheel horsepower and torque, there really wasn't much of a gain with either of those two. So that leads us to the long tube headers. Now I'm really curious to know how the long tubes have affected the performance, because 392s, Hellcats, Demons all basically have mid-length exhaust manifolds. So it's not like the 5.7 where you have these cast iron logs. So, exhaust flow going out is still optimized. That being said, long tube headers are still a superior product. So we will see, with the combination of these performance pieces in place, long tube headers, high flow cats, I believe the rest, the catback is the same, as any of the 392. We're going to see if the airflow coming out translates into wheel horsepower and torque gains. So with that being said, I'm going to kick it over to Ted and let you guys see how this Scatpack has become a better performance vehicle with these bolt-ons.
We just added Kooks long tube headers with the ceramic metallic coating, and the Kooks green cats connected to the factory Scatpack. You heard it. It sounds amazing. And we've got good gains. Our total gain to date is 20 foot-pounds and 20 horsepower. So we've been creeping up at it a little at a time. And go there. And there's our gains. Okay. One of the things I've never talked about in previous videos is how long does it take to get through the RPM. And one of the things I noticed immediately after the header install, when I went full throttle, I could feel the car accelerating faster. And in my mind, I said, yeah, this feels good. I noticed a difference right away. So what I can do here is I can pull up the elapsed time, okay, which is right here, and I can graph it, overlay open, and go back to our baseline. Lay it on there. We'll clean this up a little, take off lambda, and we'll take off manifold pressure, and we're going to add elapsed time. And you can see a pretty significant improvement. So if we go to 6,300 RPM with the long tube headers, high flow cats, the air intake system, the throttle body, that's today, this is the pull I just made, and you go back, our elapsed time is 7.7 seconds from 2,400 to 6,300. And if I click on the elapsed time for the previous run, it's 8.1 seconds. So you got 0.4 of a second improvement in acceleration rate. 0.4 of a second. That's pretty substantial.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Because this isn't a long distance. We're
Right.
not talking about 0.4 and a quarter mile. We're talking about 0.4 in what equates to probably a little bit less than an eighth of a mile. Okay, so it's a pretty substantial improvement in acceleration. So, you know, people get too wrapped up in the numbers. Oh, you only gain this and you only gain that. But, you know, when you're talking about acceleration rate, improving acceleration rate is huge. And that's all part of what power does. It makes it rip through the RPMs quicker. So I thought I'd add that in there for you guys from a technical standpoint, saying, you know, so that you don't get too wrapped up in just the numbers. Oh, you only did this or you only did that. But, you know, you go in here in the middle of the dyno pull in the torque where I moved the intake manifold runner control. We went from 408 torque to 440 torque. That's 32 foot-pounds at 4650. You know, and I smoothed out that curve. It doesn't drop down and then recover. It actually makes a transition from the long runner to short runner, and it does it smoother. You know, we've got more torque everywhere, even down on the bottom. You know, pretty substantial. We're over 400 foot-pounds at the wheels at 3,000 RPM. It's a great package. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that, you know, how good this car is right out of the box. And kudos to Chrysler, Dodge. This thing is badass right out of the box.